true. The fair tax would have full compliance. And the number, the 23% that is used, is based on full compliance. In other words, they're saying every single transaction that should be taxed would be taxed. And we have a pretty big problem with the income tax, with things not being taxed that should be. There's the black market system we talked about. But there's a whole other side of compliance, which is the legitimate market that doesn't pay their full share. And so the claim is, in the book, that that wouldn't be a problem with the fair tax. So I want to illustrate a little bit why I think it would be a bigger problem with the fair tax than the income tax. So think for a minute about two people. You probably know someone who earns a wage or a salary and is a W-2 employee, and someone that has a small business. Okay? Think about all the people you know in those buckets. Who do you think reports their income better? And I can give you some statistics about what's true about this. The small business who owns a restaurant and takes in cash and files a return, or the W-2 employee?
More accurately, is that when you say better, you mean more accurately?
Who more accurately reports their...
choice. They have to. There's
Right.
A W-2 form.
There's a W-2 form.
If you work for yourself, there's always a little you can put.
Exactly. Right. That's true. And so
the game.
what happens is the compliance when you have double reporting, where your employer reports and the employee reports, is much higher, as you would expect, because if you don't report the same number that your employer reports, it gets checked by computer, right? So it's like 97% compliance for W-2 income. For income that's earned by a business, it's more like 70%, okay? Because if you own a restaurant, you know, a lot of people are going to take a little bit of cash and put it in their pocket. It just is what happens. It doesn't happen as much here as it happens in other places, but it is a problem. And it's a problem in the order of 20 or 30% of that income. Now, the question is, which system is more like the fair tax? Okay? Is the fair tax more like the W-2 system, or is it more like the self-reporting from the business's perspective? It's more like the self-reporting from the business perspective. You're relying on that retailer to report their income and pay tax on it, just like you are in an income tax system. And they are going to put stuff in their pocket. I mean, some. Now, some people are going to be, you know, meticulous, and they're going to report everything. Very few people are going to totally underreport and just put everything in their pocket, but a lot of them will skim off the top or somehow just not end up reporting everything correctly. Mm-hmm?
How would a company like Walmart or Home Depot or a big company like that, how would they be able to evade that 23%?
They may not. It's not 100% of the problem. It's
Okay.
but what we have now is about a 20% gap on income that's reported from businesses. Small businesses are worse than large businesses.
But and that's where most of this money is going to come from anyway, is from the big companies collecting that 23%.
Well, of that same group of people that are reporting income from businesses, there's a 20% tax gap now. I would propose there'd be a similar tax gap with the fair tax. Now, that's not all of our system now, which is why I think we'll have more of a problem when we focus on that. That's where all the money's coming from. Virgil?
We have a sales tax collection self-reporting system now where a retailer collects sales tax and they self-report to the state. They collect state, local taxes. We know that there's at least a 20% gap in what people are collecting from each of us who buys something at the retail level but doesn't report it to the state. That's happening right now. That's at 4% or 7%, depending on, you know, 4% state, 7% for local. So if you add another 23% of sales tax, that's more money that people have more opportunity. At Walmart, at Target, those guys, they comply probably 99.9% of the time. Yeah. But it's the smaller ones that are getting away with about $1 billion today in sales tax revenue just for the state. And that's at 4%. If you up that to 23%, that's a greater incentive. Now they argue that you give the retailer an incentive to comply by giving them a rebate or to paying them to report, but at 23%, that's a lot more money.
And to compare it to the 7%, it would be 30 to start with, and we'll talk about why that number's not right.
Awesome.
Yeah. But you know, the point is, our tax gap is there for self-reported income. It's in a way, it's not for W-2 income. Now, the bulk of that may be the smaller vendors. The larger vendors may comply. It's not like we don't collect anything from self-reported income, but there's a gap there, and they don't reflect that in the book.
I think that what is true that the majority of the majority of the small business will report everything, and there's always a percentage of people that are not honest. but it's nothing comparable to the big boys like Lehman Brothers, Enron,
Yes.
So therefore, when you have a lot of that, it upsets it, and then the big boys move overseas where they don't have to pay.
Yeah.
So I think that it's unfair to say that, you know.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to be disrespecting small businesses. As they say, I are one, right? I mean, it's not that, but
So am I.
yeah, that's right. So I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying the fact of the matter is, you know, there is a tax gap, and it is an issue. And as Virgil said, another example would be to look at state sales tax, which also has a tax gap. So it's something you need to look at when you figure out what the rate should be, because they are presuming. And it really, one statement in the book that really got me was when Neil Bort said, I cannot imagine, he said, there will not be a tax compliance issue because with the fair tax, it takes two people colluding to misrepresent the tax. It's the exact opposite. It takes two people colluding with a W-2 system where there is dual reporting. It does not take two people colluding. You collect the money, and it's all on you to report it as the vendor. So I just thought that was really disingenuous for him to say that. Anyway.